Hi guys, welcome to another edition of Gol Bezan. The year 1998 was a very memorable year for many Iranian football lovers. Against that historic match that we beat the United States 2-1. Today we're joined by Steve Sampson. He was a notable head coach of the U.S. men's national team back in 1998, also the former head coach of LA Galaxy. We just wanted to talk about that experience, about what he thought about the match, and anything that occurred after or during it. As always, we couldn't thank you enough for the support you guys have given us. Please keep subscribing to us on iTunes. We're also on Android. You can find us on Facebook or Twitter, and we're on different platforms as well. Thank you as always, and I hope you guys enjoy this interview. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Gol Bezan. Right now I'm joined by former manager of LA Galaxy and U.S. manager back in 1998, Steve Sampson. Thank you, Steve, for coming on Gol Bezan. I appreciate your time, sir.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Yeah, so as you know, that great historic match that Iran played versus USA, basically one World Cup group game that did more to repair relations between Iran and the United States than decades of diplomacy. Before the whole match and everything, Steven, if you could talk about back in 1998, were you able to do a lot of scouting or homework on Iran's national team before even leading up to the games that happened with the World Cup?
Well, yes, we were able to. I had an assistant coach whose name was Afshin Gotti.
Mm-hmm.
He was like a second assistant for me. He actually was the head coach for Persepolis and also for the Iranian national team, and so he was part of my advisory group who was in charge of researching the Iranian national team. We also knew that Talebi was living in California at the time, and we were able to obviously take a look at the key players. And they were playing in Europe, and Maravekian was a good example of a player that we had an enormous amount of respect for. Ali Daei was also another player that was playing in Europe, and so I thought we did a very good job of doing our homework, but we also had the opportunity to watch them play in the first game of the World Cup, and that was probably the most important match to observe. I thought we did a very good job of studying Iran, but unfortunately on the day, they took advantage of two counterattack goals, and even though I believe to this day that we had more of the game from an offensive standpoint, Iran took advantage of their opportunities and we did not.
Before we talk about, what happened on the field, because of the media attention, as you could expect, it was more than just a game because of the political tension that for decades have been happening between these two great nations. How hard was it for psychologically to prepare your team against Iran in terms of, just focusing on the football aspect of it, not anything that happens outside the world of football?
Well, as early as the World Cup draw in December of 1997, once Iran was drawn to play against the United States in the World Cup in 1998. There was a massive concern with respect to security. Mm-hmm. There was an enormous amount of effort by FIFA to depoliticize the match, and I did everything possible to depoliticize the match. I wanted it to be more about football than politics, but there was no escaping the fact that it was a very high-profile match from a historical standpoint, but also from a security standpoint. There were hundreds and hundreds of plainclothes security officers in the stadium. Our national team had security in and around us during the entire World Cup, 24 hours a day. I thought it was a bit overkill, but I had to respect the wishes of the organizing committee and FIFA. Every attempt was made prior to the game with the exchange of flowers and pleasantries to again make it more about football than about politics. And I really believe on the day that was accomplished.
Yes.
So in the end, it truly became a match about football and not the political tensions that existed between the countries historically.
You know, Steven, you're talking about, the security measures and everything, which could be really overwhelming, not only for yourself, but the players as well. How hard was it to honestly to cope with this kind of issue, especially kind of prepare your players? Supposed to, nothing drastic happens before the match or after the match. To get these players ready, how difficult was it to cope with it?
Well, to be honest, I think we did a very good job of not talking about all of the politics and the security in and around the match. We knew that it was a very critical match for us in order to stay in the tournament. And so my coaches and I, all we did was talk about the football aspects of the match and how important it was that we prepare effectively for the game. I think a lot of people in and around the team, whether it be family members, whether it be members of the federation, they constantly were talking about it, and I was trying to get them to stop talking about it. So I do believe that in as much as we made a great effort to focus on the football, it did in the end become a distraction. To what extent, I have no idea. It's hard to measure those kinds of things. But bottom line is that there were moments in the game where I think the Iranian team played very well, and we did not, and we opened up the game too much because we were so desperate to score and desperate to beat Iran, and that was at a stage when the U.S. national team was still very young in its development on the world stage. And I think on the day we were a little bit naive with respect to our approach to the game, over-attacking and not trying to possess the ball a bit more and being a little bit more patient in our ability to get in behind the Iranian defense. And I think because of that, we overcommitted players offensively and left ourselves open in between our midfield line and our back line. And so for me, it was less about the politics and less about the security and more about, the moments of lack of concentration that took place on the field that led to the victory by Iran.
Yeah. Steve, you obviously touched base upon Mahdavikia, Ali Daei, as you can imagine, very well-respected players within, the continent of Asia and everything. Which Iranian player besides them that did you believe, if you remember, that needed extra care when you guys were up playing? Was it Estili, which he scored, but was there anybody else in that time period?
Well, really, those are the three players, Estili and Mahdavikian and Ali Daei. I mean, those were the key players. I mean, the other players I thought did a very good job of balancing off of those three. But it was pretty apparent to me and to the rest that Ali Daei was the target player that they played through, and Mahdavikian, I don't know if you remember the likes of Bebeto and Romario. Romario was the target player for Brazil, and Bebeto was the one that did all the running for Romario, and was really the player that should be credited for a lot of Romario's success. And I really believe that Ali Daei's success was in large part due to Estili and due to Mahdavikian. Those players, I think, were exceptional. Great speed, great technical proficiency, Ali Daei's ability in the air, Ali Daei's ability to hold the ball and to be such a strong presence in the attacking third of the field. But what impressed me most about the Iranian team was their overall ability to defend and their balance offensively, to be able to attack to the flanks and be able to attack to the middle of the field, and their ability to counterattack with great are the three players for me that to this day stick out in my mind for the Iranian national team.
You know, in the group, there was obviously Germany, Yugoslavia was Iran, and the United States. You know, obviously everybody played against one another. Which of these sides did you feel was more destined to achieve during the World Cup?
Well, Germany, of course, was coming off winning the European Championship.
Yeah.
They were European champions in 1996, and they were riding the high of doing so well through the qualification phase and to being European champions. And I just felt from their goalkeeper all the way to their front line, they were the most complete team in our group, especially. I think having to play Germany in our opening match was not to our favor, of course. As you know, it's important in a World Championship to get points in your first game, because if you don't, then it puts too much pressure on the subsequent game. Jurgen Klinsmann, who played against us, scored a clinical goal in the second half. And I really felt that the United States played intelligently from a defensive standpoint in the first half, but we gave away a very silly goal, a very easy goal for them on a corner kick. And so, in the second half, we attacked and actually created a number of chances in behind the German defense. But when you commit players forward against Germany, they tend to punish you. So we had to take a risk, and we did. And I felt that was the difference at the time between the American team that played prior to the 1990 World Cup to the 1998 World Cup, was that we actually played to win in that second half. We played to win against Iran, and even against Yugoslavia in the third match, we played to win. But I think Yugoslavia was another team that people today don't realize how many incredibly special players Yugoslavia had at the time. And now, with the breakup of Yugoslavia, whether it's Serbia or Croatia, that team was an exceptional team. And it didn't surprise me that Yugoslavia beat Iran in their first match. And then it really came down to the Iran playing against the United States to see who would be able to survive. And then I just think that even Iran would have problems against Germany, and they did, because Germany just had too many special players on the field.
Right. Steven, right now I want to talk about today, and as you could imagine, there's always been talks that hopefully, as you know, there's many even Iranians living in California and even the States itself. There's always been talks that hopefully one day there'll be a friendly match again between Iran and the United States. From your own standpoint, and, looking back at 1998 and the exchange of flowers, the symbolic figure that it presented in the sense of unity and togetherness, how would you, if somebody has been talking to you about this, how would you signify this in the terms of that if it will happen? How would you see it yourself at the time, comparing it to now? Because there's always been talks about hopefully it will happen under, Jurgen Klinsmann's team, but looking at it now, is this something that you believe will be much bigger than football like it was back in 1998?
Well, I have a lot of Iranian friends.
Right.
Here in the United States, and one of the things that I love about my Iranian friends is that they love America just like any other American,
right?
And they love being here and living here in the United States, and they don't politicize the relationship between the United States and Iran. It's the politicians that politicize, obviously, and I think the people of Iran. Obviously, with few exceptions. There's exceptions in Iran, and there's exceptions here in the United States of people that are maybe hypersensitive to the relationship. But most Iranians and most, I believe, Americans and Iranian Americans would love to see something like this happen. I personally would love to see something like this happen. Sport tends to be the unifying factor many times when two countries are having problems at the political level. We've seen this in China. We've seen this in Russia. And I believe that it would be, I think, very special and very symbolic if the United States could play Iran one game there and one game here, and use sports to bring the two peoples together. And I really believe that whether it's the efforts to, for the nuclear arms issue, to come to terms with each other. I do believe that there's a lot of people in this country and in Iran that would love to see the two countries come together and make peace. I mean, complete peace from top to bottom. But every Iranian that I've met here in the United States has been nothing but polite, nothing but patriotic, and nothing but appreciative of the opportunities that this country has given them, without losing their love of where they were born. And their love of their roots, which I also believe is important. Right. So I don't tend to be a very political individual, but I would love to see a game like that happen.
Right. Steve, my final question to you is, and that's something that even myself, living in the States, was something I admire, even growing up in Iran and moving here. Do you still, by any chance, stay and remain in contact with Afshin Ghotbi? He even was managing, I believe, at the time, LA Galaxy, I believe as an assistant coach, if I'm not mistaken, and even managed Iran. Do you still remain in contact with Ghotbi?
I do. He was most recently in Thailand.
Right.
Coaching one of their top, if not their top team there. He was in Japan for 3-4 years. After his stint with Iran. Afshin continues to be, I think, one of the finest American coaches, that this country has ever produced. It's unfortunate that because he's been in Iran and in Japan that he hasn't gotten the recognition that he truly deserves, because I think he is truly one of the best professional coaches from the United States, and it's not easy, as you know, to have success in Iran, as an Iranian American, especially. And so I think his ability to cross over into Iran and to survive, and as you know, it's very difficult to survive as a coach in Iran.
Right.
And then to take that experience and survive for 5 years in Japan is truly special. I'm shocked that he hasn't been given the opportunity to coach here in the MLS. And my hope for him is that he's given that opportunity, because he truly is an incredible human being and an outstanding coach. And yes, I do stay in touch with him. We email and text each other and talk at least 2-3 times a month.
Right, yeah, that's somebody that we've been thinking about, of why he hasn't ever gotten a chance, especially knowing his CV in the terms of, on a global scale, how much, football, aspects throughout the world he's gotten experience from in Asia, and trying to bring that experience even when he was working in the United States. Mr. Steve Sampson, really appreciate you coming on the pod. Hopefully, I don't know if you still watch any matches of Iran or anything at this moment, but we hope that we could have you on in the pod very, very soon.
Well, I know that Carlos Quiroz is doing an outstanding job and has done an outstanding job, and I think Iran has an exceptional coaching staff available to them now, and they should hold on to him as long as they possibly can, because he's only going to make football in Iran better. But it's been my pleasure, and I wish all of your fan base out there, the entire Iranian American community, well wishes, and I've always been very thankful of them for their support of me. And I hope your dream and my dream one day is realized by the two countries playing an international match someday soon.
Steven, thank you so much. I appreciate it. But my final question, now that you just talked about assistants, as you know, I'm not sure if you personally know Mr. Dan Gaspar. He's Iran.
I know him very well.
Yeah.
He's a very good friend.
Yeah. So, speaking about him, did he ever contact you anything about, that match against Iran, about him going to Iran? Because he's right now Iran's goalkeeping coach, and very, very well respected, and always talks very highly about Iran and how he's being treated there. has there ever been any communication about, the culture aspects, the football aspects between the two nations that you guys have exchanged?
Well, Dan Gaspar has been an assistant coach and been very close to Carlos Queiroz for many, many years. So I think Carlos Queiroz, if he was in Portugal or in England or in Iran, is going to bring Dan Gaspar with him because, one, they speak the same language, and two, they have complete trust and loyalty. And at the national team level, you need to surround yourself that are completely loyal and are very competent. And Dan Gaspar is both of those things. And I know that the Iranian Federation and the Iranian government has treated them very well. I've heard nothing but good things from Dan about his experience in Iran. As you know, it could be quite difficult, because they're somewhat isolated and constantly busy with footballing activities, and maybe sometimes they miss home, and being away from home, whether it's Portugal or the United States, is a very difficult thing for Carlos Queiroz and Dan Gaspar. But this is why they are football professionals, and they understand the opportunity, and they appreciate the opportunity that Iran is giving them to stay on the world stage. So I think they're going to stay as long as they possibly can and take advantage of that opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sampson. I really appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely use you more, and hopefully one day we'll even have Dan and Queiroz on.